Alrighty, welcome back everyone. It is LaughNgamez here. I'm back with another Starcraft 2 bot video. This one is gonna be a little bit different though, as it's me, LaughNgamez. I'm doing a video here today of me taking on the top Zerg bot, the top bot being ERIS. And so just recently I played a couple matches against it and thought I'd cast the replays for you guys to watch so I could kind of give some more in-depth analysis on what it's like to play versus these bots. And so ladies and gentlemen, before we get any further into this one, make sure to go ahead and click that like button if you haven't already. And yeah, if we can hit, I don't know, 27.5 likes on this video, that would be amazing. Leave a comment down below saying more bots or more humans versus bots, whatever you want to see on the channel. Leaving those comments helps with the YouTube algorithm, and you guys are the best at that. Thanks so much to everyone that does support the channel. We did actually have a very generous donation come through the PayPal. I won't say the name, but you know who you are. Thank you very much for the support. And yeah, on with the match. So this is different from our regular bot versus bot matches, as it's a human. So most notably, one of these competitors has a brain, but I'll let you guys be the one that decides that after watching me play some very rusty StarCraft 2. And yeah, then notably for starters, one of these competitors has speed binding and has a little bit of a head start because in this bot program, you basically your client launches two versions of StarCraft 2. So it runs ERIS's game, your game that you play, and then it runs the ERIS bot, which runs which actually makes ERIS play. And so then you kind of have to do some shenanigans at the start of the match where you gotta quickly press Control-M, Control-S, so you disable the sound coming from ERIS's version of the game, and then you have to sort of like Alt-Tab and full screen the actual match before you can play. So you're usually like 5 to 10 seconds behind when you start playing these bots. But anyway, I'm fortunately not at that high of a level in StarCraft 2 where things are pretty forgiving. And yeah, so a TVZ, I didn't want to just BC rush ERIS because I believe I have done that before, which kind of puts me in an odd spot because I'm usually a Terran player that BC rushes virtually 99% of my TVZs. And so I'm going for a different build, an old tried and true build, the 2-1-1 Terran opening. It's been a build that's been around for about 10 years at this point, and it's an incredibly strong build because it gives you stim marines very quickly. So that's my plan, to see how well ERIS reacts to what is kind of a standard Terran build, but it's not really something other bots do. And so what I do is I send out just one of my random marines to see if that'll mess with ERIS a little bit. I catch one of the Zerg bots' overlords, and I fire up my stim pack. My stim pack's a little bit late. My build's not coming together perfectly because it's been a while since I've done this, so I haven't had constant marine production yet, but stim is on the way. I'm making some marines, dropping mules as I've gone for an expansion. And if we look at the worker count right now, it's 36 to 25, so ERIS is just surging up in those. And so my mindset behind this game is to see if I can get some damage done to ERIS early on, so then I can potentially play a bio game or just win the game if ERIS can't handle the attack. ERIS is going for burrow, which is one of the things that playing against these bots I've realized is one of the more problematic things you have to deal with the humans. It's that these lings are all independently controlled. They can burrow themselves. That one does get caught and killed because ERIS puts them at the bottom of the ramp where they can't be seen. I don't know if those lings would run away if it had vision of the marines before I got it. I think they would, so I actually kind of noticed that while I'm playing. I'm like, oh, I could potentially just go kill that ling, because the ling can't see the marines, so then the marines are actually able to just walk up and shoot that ling before it can get away. Now ERIS is producing 14 lings, so it's kind of getting ready to defend against this 2-on-1 push that I'm going for. I'm loaded up into my medivacs and I'm crossing the map now. The magic number to defend a 2-1-1 push. It's about 32 lings and 6 queens for a Zerg. So ERIS doesn't quite have everything that it needs to defend against this. I start unloading my Marines right now, and ERIS isn't really... It is starting to react to it at this point in the match, so it's pulling the lings, but it does decide to engage the Marines with not all of its lings pooled, and that's kind of where 2-on-1s get their success. So I'm like, all right, now we're cooking. I charge on in with my Marines, and I immediately see the drones just burrow to avoid my Marines. My Marines are killing off quite a few queens, now getting overlords and drones, and killing off the lings. This ERIS is kind of doing the opposite of what bots tend to do, in that a lot of time bots are afraid to take engagements. ERIS is a little bit overzealous with these lings, just running them on in, but it's in base defense mode. You really can't blame it. And ERIS is, like, in these bot matches, like when it's bot versus bot, bots don't go for precision attacks like this as often because they just have generalized behavior. So this does allow me to grab ERIS's natural base. The Zerg is still ahead on workers by about 10, although a scan lets me kill quite a few of those. My Marines are quite overstimmed, but ERIS is down on units. It does get up a 4th hatchery while this is going on. Meanwhile, my macro is just a disaster. I'm supply blocked. I'm trying to build extra racks. Get up a 3rd command center that for some reason I decided to build as far away from my 3rd as possible. There's the burrowed ling at my 3rd, but I'm doing pretty all right at this point in the game. I've denied mining at the 3rd, so while the drones can burrow to stay alive, they are not, they're obviously not mining at all. And while I've got some very overstim Marines, they're still doing okay for themselves. ERIS was getting a baneling nest up, centrifugal hooks, but I think at this point I'm in pretty good shape if you look at this match. But the Zerg's still doing all those things. Like, it's still spreading creep during all this chaos. It's just trying to go through its regular cycles. So ERIS has this base. It's still trying to pump out drones, make some lings to defend. But I've pretty much won the game at this point. So this was my first match versus ERIS. Kind of goes to show that if you don't kill these Zerg bots quickly, they'll take off on you, which was why my approach was to try and take them off, kill them. But I think that's just because I happen to know how these bots work pretty well. I have a fairly good idea of how to take them down, and of course, even the best bots play at like a high diamond, low masters level. So then I find the last base, and I'm like, man, where is this Zerg? I gotta kill this thing. As ERIS just continues to try and produce. I'm still macroing up, but yeah, so I win the first match. The next match is gonna be me playing Protoss to change things up. I'm looking for like where ERIS is with all its stuff to clean everything up. ERIS builds another hatchery, somehow it affords that. Just goes to show that you really gotta hunt these Zerg bots down to kill them. But eventually I do win this one, clean everything up, ignore my terrible macro. I'll load into the next match. Okay, so here we are. Can even pull up that score if we want. But yeah. This time I decided to play Protoss against ERIS, and that's the thing with playing against these bots. There's ways to break bots, because even if you're the best programmer in the world, you can't program your bot to be prepared for every situation. And seeing as how bots, even Alpha Star, wasn't adaptive per game, so kind of once a bot loses to a strategy, like once you know how to beat a bot, like you know that it's just gonna work every time, basically, for the most part anyway. And so this match, I'm like, all right, let's try and pressure ERIS a little bit early on again. Go for one of my usual, well, not usual PvZ builds, but a PvZ build, the double gate adept opening, to try and put some early pressure on the Zerg to slow it down, because I know once ERIS has the map, things will get out of hand. I also decide to see if I can mess with ERIS a little bit, so I send out an early probe, see if I can get it to pull some drones off the line. And then I'm like, you know what, I know these bots, they like to pull drones to defend cannon rushes, as exactly they should. But then I think, okay, can I capitalize on that a little bit here? And yeah, I just decide to throw down a pylon, see if it can pull drones off the line. So I just try and tuck it into a nice little position where drones will have a hard time attacking it. It's by the minerals, it's by the gas. So ERIS pulls drones off the line exactly as it should. But then this pylon isn't exactly the easiest one to kill. And we do actually see ERIS kind of just group these drones up on the pylon. It doesn't send them around. This is something that a few bots do. And one drone kind of starts to go around, but then I'm messing with my probe. But we do see 4 drones are trying to attack this pylon, but only 2 are, even 5. So that's a pretty good value pylon, messing with the bot a little bit. And then behind this, I'm so focused on doing my thing. I believe I actually get supply blocked a little bit and messed up my build. But anyway, now let's see here. Yeah, I get supply blocked because the pylon eventually actually does die. So I kind of play myself a little bit because I'm like, all right, time to make my 2 adepts. And then the pylon dies, and I'm only able to start one of them. As the second one, I didn't quite have enough minerals, then I get supply blocked, and I'm like, oh man, I even chrono boost it too, which is the painful thing. Just a little bit of egg on my face, which means the power of the 2-gate adept opening is you have 2 adepts, but I only have 1. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll wait for a second and third adept, but then I gotta wait for this pylon to finish, which takes forever. As StarCraft players know how it feels when you're supply blocked, it just takes so long, but that pylon I went for, it did slow down ERIS a little bit. The Zerg is now going for a 3rd base, and I do have my next 2 adepts on the way, so looking to get a bit aggressive in this match, all the while the Zerg is just floating on over with overlords, checking me out, getting uplink speed for defense. And yeah, I'm just waiting for my next couple of adepts to pop on out. I do throw up a Stargate, as that's the way I like to follow this up with. I think it flows pretty nicely because adepts cost relatively little gas. So then you have gas for a Stargate, so you can make oracles or void rays. In my case, it's usually void rays because I'm not a good enough player to manage oracle energy efficiently. And void rays can just attack all the time for free. Now, we do have my 3 adepts crossing the map. They're going to be looking for some drones. ERIS has fired up Burrow, but it's a long way away. So I come on in with these adepts. ERIS immediately pulls its queen to start attacking these adepts. The queen eats a couple of shots. It's trying to avoid the adepts, but now I'm like, oh, okay, time to start chasing down these drones. They don't have Burrow yet. The adepts then shade into the main base, which is something that I imagine is very hard to program for. The drones do have my adepts chasing them all over the place. Now, this is a lot of lost mining time for ERIS. If we take a look at the income graph, ERIS's income really plummets. I can just sort of shade the adepts around. I go from the main to the natural. ERIS is firing up more queens, getting up a roach horn, but it's not really making any lings to deal with the adept threat immediately. And so if I was microing my adepts properly, I probably could have got a bit more damage done. And then I'm like, wait a second, let's try splitting up these adepts a little bit. One in the main, see if I can cost some mining time there, but then also cost more mining time elsewhere. But then my adepts just path to chase some drones out onto the map. Behind this, I'm just, once again, doing a terrible job back rowing, as I do anytime that I go ahead and micro my units. I'm like, okay, 2 more adepts. Those last ones worked out pretty well. I make a void ray, and at this point I'm like, okay, if I'd committed a little bit more to this and say made 4 or 6 adepts, I get the feeling I probably just could have won the game off the back of this, because the adepts hit pretty strong. ERIS takes so long to clean these up, which I think it's just because it wants to build drones and it doesn't really take the threat seriously enough. Adepts are one of those low supply but high damage potential to Zergs early on. I have 2 more adepts. I start chasing down the drones. They can burrow now to try and stay alive, but popping out of the gas, they can't burrow fast enough. And then, so I'm still just looking for a bit of damage. I fire up a robo because I see the burrow, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to deal with burrowed lings, which means I'm going to need an observer, or 20. Behind this, I'm like, okay, I gotta spend my money, which I'm doing a very poor job of. I'm still denying so much mining time, though, just with 1 adept. There's, like, that's 17 drones planted in the ground like potatoes because of 1 adept. The queens are taking a long time to clean up, so that's why I get a nice economic lead for a little bit anyway. I send out a couple more adepts, got my 1 void ray out. I'm still floating money like a madman, floating money like I'm Bill Gates. I'm like, all right, I'm building 3 Stargates because I can. And if you have enough money in StarCraft 2 to build 3 Stargates at the 6-minute mark, that means you're doing a very terrible job macroing. That's just a fact of life. But you got to spend your money if you got it anyway, so I'm just doing that. I go for 2 more adepts to harass to keep messing with ERIS. They do burrow, and there is lots of queens out now, some roaches. I just keep shading my adepts around. Meanwhile, I got this Void Ray doing its thing, making another Void Ray, getting up a 3rd Nexus. At some point, I build a Forge, too, because I'm like, I'm going to need to build cannons to keep lings out of my base, because it is ERIS. But, yeah, look at this. All this lost mining time because of a few units harassing. I got my Void Ray in the main. I pull that out in time. Meanwhile, the adepts, yeah, they're still just costing mining time. And, yeah, I'm just like, all right, 3 Void Rays at a time. Once again, if you can afford to build 3 Void Rays at a time, you're not exactly playing the best StarCraft 2, because it means you've banked way too much money. But then I'm like, all right, 3rd base is up, building the Forge, still doing my thing. This is where ERIS kind of starts to swarm all over the map. As I'm like, all right, I'll try and take a 4th base, but now there's lings running all over the place. There's of course a burrowed ling there. I was hoping maybe it wouldn't be there. And at this point in the game, I was surprised by how much ERIS was attacking, just sending lings out on the map. I have a couple Void Rays and adepts that are still running around doing their thing, but ERIS is sending out even more lings. It attacks some rocks, but then it's still just running these boys all over the place. I just built 2 pylons because I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to build a cannon. And that's one of the things that's very difficult if you're not a pro StarCraft 2 player, which I definitely am not. It's controlling your observers, man. Trying to have your observers in position to deal with just burrowed units so you can take an expansion, like, that's not something you usually have to deal with in StarCraft 2 as often. Like, pro players do burrow lings, but like, not for your 4th usually, because burrow's usually a later upgrade for the Zerg. But man, it's like, oh, I gotta move this observer around. It's such a hassle to play against ERIS. Then lings are harassing my 4th base. So at this point, I'm actually starting to get a little bit worried. I'm like, oh man, ERIS has totally just bought itself so much time. It's gonna be macroing up. Lings are running all over the place. I do get a 4th base started, which is good. But in these StarCraft 2 matches against the bots, it really is difficult to take expansions, because look at this, ling burrowed, and it's like you got to move the observer. I'm someone that F2s my army all the time. It's just not perfect, and yeah, it's really difficult to try and expand against ERIS. Meanwhile, the Zerg bot, of course, is just doing everything perfectly, getting up a 5th hatchery, making drones, getting 1-1 on the way. I'm like, okay, ERIS is going to be maxing out in another minute or 2, so I'm like, okay, I need some AoE, I need some stuff, so I'm spending my money for once, making a Colossus, getting extended thermal lance, a Templar Archives for Psystorm, because that works pretty good late game against Zerg, getting up a fleet beacon because I realize my Void Rays are super slow, and I'm like, okay, I've made 7 Void Rays because I'm a madman, and I decide to go on in to see if I can get any damage done. This works out against humans, and just to try and snipe production facilities with Void Rays, because they can get in, they can get out. And so I go on into the main. I'm like, hey, an Evo chamber. Let's grab that. Prismatic alignment. Let's Void Rays kill buildings very quickly. ERIS reacts quite fast, though. I am able to cancel that upgrade, which was nice for me. I wasn't able to get the Infestation Pit or the Hydra Den, though, but of course, my Void Rays can potentially go back on in later. But like, I see all those Hydras, and I'm like, oh man, the Zerg swarm is coming, so I'm building cannons. I do get up a 5th base, which is important too. I just built a pylon, built a cannon, so it would kill the ling, because that's one of the things that is why it's easier to kind of secure an expansion with a probe and a cannon. It's because probes don't respond to F2, so you can send a probe over, build a pylon, build it, and your probe will still be there as long as it doesn't get killed. ERIS is all over the place with Overseers, just keeping eyes on me, moving all its stuff. I'm still trying to be a pain and pop on in with my Void Rays, but ERIS is just hanging out. It gets like, all right, keep these units here. And at this point, I'm like, okay, it's time. I gotta kill this Zerg, because this game could actually be getting away from me. at this point. So I'm like, okay, let's build a lot of gateways, start researching charge. I'm getting upgrades and whatnot going because I'm like, okay, I need to kill ERIS because soon enough it's going to be like fully hitting its stride. My Void Rays, I kind of don't pay the most attention to them, but they do okay for themselves. I try and grab this infestation pit, and I do get it, pulling back the injured Void Rays, and that is to slow down ERIS's infestors, which I do believe I got neural parasite there, perhaps. But then look at this. Roaches are somehow getting by my cannons, harassing them. Like, okay, more cannons to defend this base, because I know ERIS is always going to be microing these roaches, attacking on in, burrowing them, then running away with them. And ERIS just goes for a full-on attack, tosses down a fungal growth, catches a bunch of my High Templar, and I'm like, oh man, this Zerg is just going for it. So I'm getting a little bit concerned here. Fortunately, I do have a big beefy Protoss army though. I did even drop a Psystorm or two in there to try and defend this attack. Meanwhile, of course, there's Lings and Roaches still harassing my 5th base. Fortunately, the cannons are doing their work. I do lose a Colossus. ERIS is attacking on in with everything. And yeah, I managed to survive this attack, but look at those fungals that ERIS gets off. It's quite incredible. Even a second one. The spells are definitely real. The Zerg went for its first attack, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting a little nervous at this point. I'm like, did I throw away this game? Should I have tried to win this game in the first 5 minutes? And the answer to that is yes. But still, I'm like, oh man, now there's roaches in my main base I got to deal with. That ERIS will get units in to harass if you have any opening, it seems. Infestors are tossing out fungals, beautifully timed, just waiting the minimum amount of time for that fungal to expire before having another one ready queued up. There's also Vipers out for ERIS too, Roaches and Hydras kiting back onto creep. My army's all over the place right now, and fortunately my upgrades do help me not lose units too easily, but there's parasitic bombs going down on my Void Rays. I'm like, oh man, I gotta split my Void Rays, which fortunately most of them are still alive at this point in the game. But yeah, I'm like, okay, I guess I'll try and attack on in to see if I can kill ERIS because I just know that this bot isn't gonna slow down. I mean, somehow there's a creep tumor in my main base during all this chaos. There's still just random roaches and lings that are trying to harass, but the cannons are doing a pretty good job defending from that, because otherwise I'd just fall apart to the harassment. Like, you have to build static defense cannons when playing against a bot like ERIS. I'm pushing on in. Fortunately, the bot isn't consolidating forces as well, but there's a random spore crawler forest that some of my carriers run on into, which I'm not even noticing, because I'm just focused trying to attack on in, keep my production going. I'm making stalkers because I'm like, all right, what else can I make? I think I may even lose a carrier to some of these spore crawlers at some point. And yeah, look at that. A carrier dies to spore crawlers. How about that? Meanwhile, I'm trying to push on in on the front, but things are going pretty good for me. ERIS is about to have 3-2 upgrades, though, which is better than mine. I'm definitely neglecting my upgrades, and I realize that. I'm like, okay, get those going. Chrono boost them out. Somehow 2 roaches made it into my main base once again, though, causing problems all over the place. ERIS is actually mustering quite a defense against this. I'm falling in supply because my macro's falling apart. I'm like, okay, I gotta deal with these roaches in my main, so I'm warping in zealots, but I know I'm not gonna be able to kill them because they'll probably just burrow and get away. At least one of them does. But I do want to get damage done to ERIS. I know it's time to try and smother the fire before it grows even larger. And so I do try and get a base. I believe I get this base. Meanwhile, ERIS still fighting with infestors and roaches. Its army doesn't seem as consolidated as it potentially could be. There's the odd Broodlord out here and there, but everything's being controlled all the time by this Zerg bot. Killing off that hatchery was nice, but I mean, ERIS still has a pretty solid economy with all these other bases. Parasitic bombs going down, killing off most of my Void Rays too. I'm making carriers at this point because they're a little bit more beefy. I do manage to secure a 5th or a 6th base, fortunately, because I did put an observer on hold position mode there, and my units were naturally rallying through towards this base. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to take it. I'm building even more cannons in my main because I'm tired of roaches getting on in there. I'm looking to push on in and kill this base, but I'm really being punished by my lack of attack upgrades. +1 stalkers don't deal that much damage. Like, it seems like it takes so much attack to kill off that hatchery. ERIS is all over the place with corruptors. I'm trying to get on top of them with my stalkers to protect my carriers and stuff. Then there's fungals being tossed all over the place. It even tries to take one of my colossi, which is very rude. Meanwhile, there's still roaches inside my main base. I'm like, I gotta kill these roaches. I build even another cannon. There's still the creep tumor in my main that I haven't dealt with. Blinding Cloud going down. I am still taking an okay fight on the front because bots do have a hard time dealing with death balls, as it's very hard to program the engagement to handle that. Resources lost, I am trading much better than ERIS. 20k to 30k. Is pretty darn good for the Protoss. Me getting up my 6th base is important too because I'm starting to mine out in my main and my natural, so that's gonna give me more steam. But this whole time I have had a pretty solid economy and all the resources I need. ERIS though is just still, I'm amazed at how many locations it's able to poke on in and prod. I'm like, all right, I gotta kill this bot, and I'm really trying here, but ERIS does have a hard time maintaining its army supply since it is always trading out. Getting out corruptors though too. I'm like, okay, let's group up. Meanwhile, creep is all over the place being a nuisance. Like, look at the map with all the creep. Where am I going to expand to next? And that kind of becomes the theme of this game, as I'm like, okay, let's go clean up some creep at this point, bringing my entire army to clean up creep because I'm not that good of a player to segment off an observer and some of my army to clean it up. So this is totally overkill, and I could be doing better things with my army. So I'm like, all right, let's clean up this creep and try and get this expansion, killing so many tumors. And I'm like, okay, clean up all the creep, yada yada yada, and I missed 2 tumors. And look at this, ERIS immediately spreads the creep again, and my probe shows up, and it's like, oh man, I'm just never gonna be able to take another base, am I? So it's such a nuisance. Meanwhile, there's just random lings attacking some of my stuff. Roaches have been killing probes this whole game. 33 dead. Even though the roaches have been dying. I decide to attack on in, though. I got my stalkers blinking forward. There is fungal growth going down, but not enough to really capitalize on it, as I do take quite a nice trade. I'm able to push on in towards ERIS's base. I got a carrier that's doing a good job attacking this base. That's definitely not intentional, though. Finally, I'm getting 3/3 upgrades on the late. That's very late, but better late than never. And yeah, ERIS is starting to run out of steam. It's just losing so much stuff throughout this game. Mining time being denied and whatnot as well. I killed off this base. I'm killing off this base. And so that does deal a good economic blow to the Zerg. But it just goes to show, like, I'm actively trying to kill ERIS at this point. And it's just not that easy. I'm in quite a good spot, though, and I know it. Like, you know when you're winning a game of Starcraft 2, and when you could have probably won a game of Starcraft 2 already as well. But I'm taking my time. I'm having some fun with it. I'm still trying to get up an expansion. I'm, like, building a pylon, but creep is actively spreading on it, so I can't even build a cannon to clean up the creep. It's just ridiculous. I think I tried to send over an observer at some point, but then I, like, F2 it away. I'm like, okay, let's get ERIS, let's go for the main base and kill all the tech, then it'll stop making stuff. But these Zergs, these bots, they're very hard to snuff out. And so even though I start killing off the tech, I'm sure ERIS starts building more tech elsewhere. And I believe it does. Like, I think it builds another Roachworn somewhere else, and at some point it builds a Roachworn over here too, which is just comical. I'm killing off lots of overlords though too, forcing ERIS to rebuild those, so getting the supply block in too. That's just there's no way ERIS can win the game at this point. But yeah, it just goes to show how much fun playing against these bots are, and how kind of daunting they are. I do manage to get up 1 cannon. I bring an observer over, and I'm like, but my army's down here. I'm like, God, I'm never gonna get an expansion up. I have probes start attacking the creep tumors, even moving the observer around. I'm like, all right, let's get these tumors down. I'll eventually get up this expansion. I'm slowly cleaning up ERIS's stuff, but you kill one hatch, you take another, so I start building pylons on the map to try and prevent ERIS from taking new bases. because these bots, they don't GG out easily, that's for sure. Meanwhile, corruptors are actually looking to get work done against my carriers. It almost grabs another of them. So ERIS's control is just quite incredible. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to play against these bots, you can do that. I leave that in the description for all of my videos. The ProBots team at ES Champ, I believe they're the ones that organize it and have the program that lets you play versus the bots. And so if you want to do that, you absolutely can. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to go ahead and click that like button. I'm still trying to take an expansion. I'm like, oh my gosh, kill the creep. It's just all over the place. There's still one more tumor in the top left. This really is my hardest battle. ERIS is still just rebuilding all over the place. It's mining at this base. It's making lings. I'm not sure it's built the comically placed roach warren yet. Then I'm like, okay, cannon rush this hatchery just because I had a probe there. And then lings actually are produced to kill the cannons. It's such a nuisance. I'm like, why won't you die? I recently rewatched V for Vendetta, so that's pretty much the quote that sums it up. And yeah, so I come in, I clean up this space. Where's the comical roach warren? Where is it? Is this drone gonna build it? Maybe it was already built and killed. 2 have died. I don't believe so. Maybe it has though. I finally kill off that last creep tumor with probes. So it's been like 10 minutes now trying to get up another base. It's just ridiculous. I'm hunting down ERIS. I'm like, where is this Zerg bot? It's in this location to the right, because of course it rebuilds and replaces that. This drone is still just running around. I am wondering when it's gonna build the goofy roach warren, or if it has already, or what. Anyway, I'm still just trying to clean everything up. I'm building more cannons and pylons all over the map. ERIS is still making lings though, still being a nuisance with them. There's a roach warren on the way up. It builds a roach warren right here. It's like, yeah, dead center of the map. This is the spot, because why not? And I'm like, okay, I find the space in the top right. And yeah, it just goes to show that these bots will play you in the late game if you want to have a late game match. This is by no means an attempt to belittle the bots or anything like that. It's good to be realistic about the level of them. And these bots really are incredible, because it is a little scary playing ERIS in the late game if you don't do early damage to it. Like, if I hadn't gone for that adept opening, it probably would have just macroed the pants off me. So they're quite incredible bots. ERIS does eventually GG out. It's like, okay, this game's over. I got 15k minerals in the bank, and I finally did get up an expansion. Then I'm like, oh man, I gotta try and take another base. This is gonna take forever. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this video, click that like button. If you haven't already, leave a comment down below saying more bots. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and you watched all the way to the end of this video. If you do want to support the channel, consider becoming a YouTube member, or there is a PayPal link down below. Big thank you to everyone who does support the channel. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching.